Okay, let's do this in one take, folks. Welcome to today's video. We are going to be talking about my most expensive balisongs and why you would pay as much for a balisong. Do they make sense? Why balisongs that are expensive are kind of stupid, and spending this much, does it get you better flippability? Does it get you a better balisong? Like, does this one really yield that much more of a cost than this one? Are they that much different when it comes down to it? Like, why would you pay $1,000 for something like this instead of just $500 for something like this, or just get both of them like this moron did? So let's get into some of the finer specifics. Now, I put a price cutoff of at least $500, which I'm sure some of you are like, holy smokes, that's a lot of money, and it is. It's a stupid amount of money to spend on a knife. And balisongs are one of the few knives in the knife collecting realm that we all exist in. Balisongs like this little circle, and then you got this big circle of knives, and we're inside that circle, right? Or just adjacent to it or something. So we're probably the few folks that spend as much as we do on our knives. Okay, so $500 was the cutoff. So we will not be talking about my beloved gaboons, because they are $400 to $425, depending on how cool the anodization you get is. This is the confetti. It has some cool laser work to it. So gaboons are actually out of this one, even though I think a gaboon is a great value for what you're getting in a balisong, and some do consider it a grail. And it's fine if you consider, $200 balisongs grails. Another one we're not going to be talking about is my Flytanium Fly 1, which does have a custom anodization by BA Bally's. Okay, so this one's a chameleon anodization, as we called it, and you might be thinking chameleon, it's not color shifting. Yes, it's based on my chameleons, and if you know anything about chameleons, they don't do color changing for camouflaging effect. It's a lot different than that, though it does, they do tend to blend into their environments. Their color changing has nothing to do with blending into the environment. This isn't a chameleon video. This is a balisong video. All right, so ones that we will be talking about are, my MachineWise Serif, my MachineWise Slift. We're going to talk about the Revenge of the Blades Arsenal. We're going to talk about the Medusa, brand new, still getting the feels for this one. We're going to talk about the Nikiri, because while the base price of this was $480, the anodization work puts it over. And if you've seen some controversial topics of the Nikiri, is it truly only $480 when that gets you a non-tumbled, very raw handle version? And I have thoughts and opinions on it, but at the end of the day, it's you get what you get, and for $480, there's going to be added costs. Blake had to do things on his end, and I've got some other things to say about, how much you should pay for something that's made in America versus not. And that's another reason why $400 or $500 is kind of my cutoff, is most of the stuff that is made overseas in China, which is fine, is going to be less. It's not going to cost as much because it doesn't cost as much to produce overseas. When you have American workers here, a lot of the times, just an individual like JK Design, who lives in San Francisco, the Bay Area, one of the most expensive places in the nation, mind you. Yeah, it's going to add a lot more cost to the overall end product. So those are things that you need to consider, and why, the Chinese stuff is, frankly, I don't think if it's over $500 really worth it if it's made in China. And that's not to say that you can't get quality out of China. It's to say that you got to think, how much are they making on their back end if they're charging that much? Because unless they're doing really, really small batch, like in the case of the Nikiri, this was pretty small batch, I don't think you're making a crazy amount over on it. And then there's also, just the time that he has to take to put these together too. These weren't assembled over in China either. So it creates a complicated, value assessment of it all. But anyways, $500 was the cutoff for this show off, and we are going to start with the least expensive one going up to the most expensive one. So now that we've set the ground, let's get into it with the Slift. This is honestly one of the best values I think you can get in this group. MachineWise is known for their quality. I know my camera work here is always wonderful, so hopefully this is picking up in some manner or fashion. It's probably not. So machining on these is impeccable. The QC work on these is impeccable. This one has the Serif blade, which they've now just called the drop point. If you know anything about blade shapes, drop point is when you essentially have a mostly straight line. Sometimes there's a little swedge. As you can see, this one has a swedge there where it tapers to the tip, and then it just drops straight off. Now, the difference being the clip point, which we do have, here, hiding back here, we do have the actual official Slift blade on my Prisma here, which Prisma didn't make the cut off the Prisma Pro. So this is more of a clip point or a buoy style, and a clip point, again, has that swedge and it cuts a little more going to the tip. So now you know that. But yeah, this one was $550, and I believe it went for $550, making our $500 cutoff. And this is the full channel version, so I don't have the speed channel cutouts on this. And I really like this blade a lot. I like this knife a lot. I think I'd probably like the speed channel slightly more because I think the speed channel would add a ton of grip on the sides here. A lot of people think titanium is not slippery or is super grippy, and while yes, it's more grippy than aluminum is, I do think that when you've got the flat face like this with a more, refined finish that MachineWise does, you do feel that sleekness a lot more. Raw titanium, like non-tumbled raw titanium, yeah, it's probably super grippy. I have not experienced super raw titanium except for my Zaphoid is a little wrong. We're going to get into the Zaphoid. So anyways, Slift, great. This has the pink anodization, which I really like. And this was not a custom Slift. This was in one of their drops that I picked this up. The cutouts on it are great, and the machining on this is impeccable. I think anything from MachineWise is worth the cost. They actually probably underprice a lot of their balisongs. So if you can, I would buy one sooner than later because they're starting to expand out into places like Blade HQ and more, and they are expanding their shop. So when they're able to go into bigger production, they're either going to at least maintain the current pricing models, which would be great because hopefully they're able to bring costs down on their end and make more on the balisong at the end of the day, which I think is perfectly fine to do, or they're going to have to increase the costs of their balisong because the expansion costs and more. So right now they are actually doing pre-orders on the Sonora, so you cannot get a Slift right now. They're going to complete pre-orders on the Sonora, which is the folder they're doing, and that's going to help them do the shop expansion. So moving on from the Slift, now you would think we're going to go to the Serif. No. The Serif is a bit more expensive, so we're going to get to the Serif after we talk about some other $500 balisongs. Now, you probably saw my video a couple weeks ago on the FrankenForge Voltaic. This little beastie boy is a wonderful balisong with some, I would say, QC work that needs to be refined over time. Overall, the flippability of this is great. It's more when you're paying $550 for a balisong, there's some like certain refinement that you want, like and it probably doesn't quite show up on camera, but up at the handles here, and I don't know if it's like where he pulled it off the pallet or whatever, but there's just some like marks in there that like that's not coming off from me like, doing some rubbing or whatever. That needed to be, refined in the QC process or whatever. The blade here also has some milling lines that didn't get fully leveled out, and again, this just goes to what you're going to get when you're buying from an individual making the knife. That's why this cost $550. This is a single guy doing all of this, essentially. I think he buys his hardware, but other than buying the hardware, he's machining the handles, he's machining the blades, he's doing all the work himself. So you're paying that guy's wage directly when you're paying for this knife. And I think considering the materials that you're getting out of this and the quality of the knife overall, it's good. Those minor things, I think that's what you're getting when you're this early on in the creator's life. Like this one's number 73 for the blade. I can't remember exactly how he numbers these, but you know, he's learning, and I think he's only in his 20s. He's pretty young. I think he's like 20. Like I think he turned 20 recently, or is going to be turning 21, something like that. So this is one of my favorite opens right now, by the way. This guy, and then we swing it around to close. Oh, I enjoy that. If you listen to the recent Blade Bias, they were talking about, you know, tricks that you can just do with your eyes closed. And this is definitely the one that I just have down. I don't know why, it just feels so right. If I was sitting and editing my videos, which I'm just going to upload this raw because I suck, a raw dog in it, I would say this is the one that I can do with my eyes closed. That looks kind of cool. Also, ladders, I can do those fixed ladders. And the FrankenForge Voltaic is so nice for these. Like, really enjoy this one overall. And I think I even said that this is one of the ones that I flip most of the time. I dulled the blade on this, so I won't get cut. And that makes it very comfortable for flipping overall. Love the feels of this, and it does have like a premium feel. I think there's some minor refinements that can come in time as FrankenForge continues to make these, but overall the flipping of this knife is great. I love the feels of the handles. I like the weight too. A lot of people in the different videos that you'll see out there will like complain about the lightness or how it swings, and I can understand why they'd have that opinion, considering if you like depending on what your preferences are, right? That's what balisongs come down to. What are your preferences? And out the box, this one fit my preferences, in all honesty. So I enjoy it. You can put weights in this. This does have a weight system, whereas the Slift, you can just remove these screws in the end, or the bolts, pivots, and that'll reduce a little bit of handle weight, but that's like all you get. With the FrankenForge, there's like pins in here. I'm not going to take it apart and show you because that's annoying, but yeah, you can add some brass pins to add some weight to this guy. So there's that. Moving onward, we are going to talk about the Zaphoid. Now, we're in a weird space right now because the Nikiri, again, at its base price of $480 to get in on it, is technically less than the Zaphoid is, or the other two that we have talked about, the Slift and the FrankenForge Voltaic. But what put the Nikiri above those was the extra Anna work that I got, and then if you also consider that you have to pay to get it tumbled. So I think most people would probably want theirs tumbled, so it actually pushes that base price up. Or at least most people would want them tumbled after realizing getting a raw finish is not the way to go, which, thoughts aside for that right now. So, Zaphoid, this one again from an individual maker. This guy drives over an hour to get to the machine to make these handles, to make these blades, and this is the product you get. And I think it's just absolutely fantastic. I actually messaged him on Instagram, and I told him I love coming back to the Zaphoid, and I think it goes toe-to-toe with my most expensive balisongs, a $900 balisong and a $1,000 balisong. And for $575, and you can get the blems for like $500, and a blem, I don't think you're going to notice anything difference in the flippability of it. There's going to be some minor things, kind of like how I showed off with the Voltaic, is what you would see. Like the latest blem he showed, the milling lines were like slightly off up at the base. So that's what he considers a blem. His QC work on these is so good. When I first did my first impressions on this, not like a real full review, but I just gave like some thoughts and ideas. I had said that the jimping on here was like too sharp. I don't know if my hands have just gotten, less weak over time, but that's not an issue anymore. That doesn't, I don't feel that as much, and this knife is just super awesome. Downsides with it being tang pins instead of Zen pins. Some people don't like tang pins. I don't notice any difference in the flippability of it, and I haven't noticed any issue with like the where it connects with the handles hasn't been an issue for me. Yeah, it's pretty decently slicey too. That's why you don't see me doing that one as much. I don't like doing certain tricks with blades that I know are sharper, just because it's, when you're on camera, you're on pressure and stuff, so you won't see me doing certain things. But wonderful, wonderful balisong here, and I think this one out of the group, this one and MachineWise are probably some of the best machine work, I think, on the balisongs. It's just super nice, and the minor things that he needs to do differently, I think, are mainly because of the size that he is. Again, individual person putting in all the work on this, which is just cool. Very similar to like when Dalen from MachineWise was starting out and doing everything on his own with just one CNC machine. So very similar setup. Love this knife. Can't wait to see more from T7 Metal Works. Check them out. Okay, so now we're getting into like weird spaces of exact prices. So the Nikiri. This one technically went for $480, but there's been a couple of videos lately talking about how there was an additional charge to get these tumbled. An additional charge, I think, of $80. Now, I don't know what it costs to tumble something. All I know is that there's time involved. There's time for that machine to tumble those handles. And Blake, the maker, creator of the Nikiri, can price things however he wants. If you think that's not a fair price, then you can take it to someone else who will do it for less, right? That's a free market for you. It's wonderful to have a free market, and I don't know what to say other than I don't know what prices are on tumbling, so maybe that's a fair price, maybe that's way overpriced, or maybe it's, at the higher end for getting something from someone who's gonna give you, a good balisong. Now, I really enjoy this knife a lot. I need to send it back to Blake because I think Penguins, or I can't remember who it was, someone else was experiencing it too, but some blade tap and rub when you're opening it. And from what I know, everyone else who's, worked with Blake on it, he's taken care of it. I just need to message Blake about it specifically and bring it up with him. He's pretty responsive on Instagram from my experience with him, so I'm not too concerned about getting it taken care of. The thing is, I just enjoy the thing so dang much that I don't want to have to send it out and be without it, because this is in my regular rotation. I spent, I think it was $200 for the ano and laser work that I have on it, and it's pretty detailed laser work that's probably not going to show up on camera, but I've got this pattern work all over on my arms, and that's the same work that I've got, the same pattern work done all over the handles, right? So that's a lot of laser work. And then I also have a pig and rooster, which are a reference to some tattoos on my feet on the ends of the handles. So, and then just a pretty basic pink anodization here. Yeah, let's just get some spinning in on there. Oh, I really love the fans, and this is actually the one where I can do palm fans the best. Watch, I'm not going to be able to produce it for the camera now. Oh, there we go. So I can do palm fans the best on this one. I also like the interchangeable weight system. Oh, been talking for a second. Let's get some water. So I do think the weight system on this is pretty cool too. I have no weights in right now because I think that feels really nice. And it's slightly neutral to maybe close to a blade bias, but I like this knife a ton. And once I get some of those kinks worked out with the tuning of it, I think it's going to be probably my favorite knife, especially in terms of flipping. The stonewash debacle, I think on one end, I think it's like be upfront about it. That's another thing. I do believe that this was manufactured over in China. So if it wasn't coming, finalized from a maker in the US, like he is putting them together over here and doing the tuning over here, and you can work directly with him on issues that you have. And I think that's what sets it apart from buying like and I don't want to name any specific brands, but any Chinese brand that is not doing like work here. They're not located here. So you're more disconnected, and I don't think you get the same QC work. Now you could say, well, QC work means providing, a tumbled finished handles, yada yada. I think yes and no. The yes part is that gets you what you are considering a finished product. And I think that's where being upfront about what you're getting with that $480 price point, which was pretty appealing to a lot of people. I think being upfront about that is where you can get better clarity, but I don't think that takes away from how good this is. And at what I paid for it, I'd still go for it, all things considered, because I really like this knife. I'm not, Blake's friend in real life. We chat on Instagram every once in a while. I'll message him, about the different mod work that he does, and he's been a responsive, cool person in those regards. And I think he makes a really, really cool balisong. Like this one is in my rotation regularly. Also, blade's not sharp, but that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So, we've got two that I'm going to show you at the same time. We've got my Serif, and we've got my more recently acquired Medusa. Head-to-head battle, okay? Now, currently, you can get the Serif for $650 if I know my prices right now. And when I was on their website the other day, pricing out the Serif, the Medusa $750. When I was pricing out the Serif the other day, currently you can only get it in the drop point. So this is the Tonto, otherwise known as the Opus blade. Now, you can only get it in the drop point, which I have on my Slift. So it'd be this blade with these handles, right? And then when you do the different anodizations on there, it keeps the price set at $650. And that's at least, as far as like yesterday on Easter when I was checking this out. I don't know if that's a glitch or if I just wasn't seeing something calculated correctly, but typically when you would add on anodizations, it would increase the price. So with this setup that I have here, I did the Surprise Me finish, and I actually got a Black Friday discount, so I didn't pay as much as I would have to otherwise. But with the Surprise Me anodization and this blade and these handles, it came out to, I think, $670. However, if I was able to input the anodization that I got here, which is a distressed anodization, and I believe it's a heavy distress with a fade, so you're getting multiple colors, that actually bumped it up into like the $700 price range. So $670 to $700 for this guy. Or right now with a different blade, you could get it for $650. For $650, this is a sick knife, even with the different blade. I actually really like the Opus blade on this, or the Tonto blade. I think this knife is absolutely fantastic. Any knife you get from MachineWise is going to be superb compared to any other knife you can get at the price level. This is honestly competitive with $1,000 knives. And I'm not sure, I think Dalen's just a bro. I think Dalen wants people to experience extreme quality in a knife, okay? So this guy, $650 to $700. I think is worth every penny. And I don't know what to say about it that isn't worth the price. I think they're so competitively priced, and while they're not necessarily affordable, I don't think he can really come down more, considering it's made in America. It's got the level of work that it has. Like, there's nothing bad with this knife. It's so good. Like, you really would have to put it under a microscope to find things to nitpick about. It would just come down to, does it fit your preferences or not? And that's another thing that I want to say. Once you get past $500 in a balisong, and really once you get past like $300, what you're paying for is finish work and preferences. And what is more important to you? Does it match your preferences, or does the finish work meet a certain criteria? And I think if you're going to be flipping the knife, you want it to match your preferences. If you're just going to be looking at the knife, then you want it to match finish work, right? And, you know, collectors are probably a little bit in both spaces, with them probably weighing more heavily towards finish work. So, the Medusa, $750. And I've gotten some questions about what are the differences between the previous versions of the Medusa, which I think V1 was like $450, and then V2 went up to like 500 something, and now we're at $750 for the Medusa. What's changed with it? Why is it so much more expensive? I've got a message out to Fellowship Blades asking them, you know, what those differences are that they can describe. Not necessarily from a pricing standpoint, but just more from a lineage standpoint. How has this design changed? I do know as far as the handle design goes, there is some more stuff going in where you see this handle gap area. So that, I think, changed the weight and balance of this quite a bit from the V1 to the V2. But he said in a Instagram post, design overall on the handles isn't massively different from V2 to V3, which is what this one is. This is the V3. I do know that the blade is MagnaCut now instead of S35VN. So that's one of the main difference that you're getting. And, you know, I'm sure some people are like, oh, I don't care about MagnaCut, it's just a balisong, whatever. So MagnaCut is a more premium steel than S35VN variants, which is what you find in MachineWise products. And why would you want MagnaCut over S35VN in your balisong if you're just flipping it? Honestly, it doesn't matter. The MagnaCut might be a little bit more durable as far as, you know, falling and more. The biggest thing is in the knife world, you're going to get far better edge retention and cutability over time and corrosion resistance. So, you know, that's another good thing for balisongs. It does offer better corrosion resistance, especially if you're going to be in an environment where you're dropping it in like the grass a lot and it's getting wet and you're not wiping it off. S35VN also offers really good corrosion resistance though, so not as good as MagnaCut, but at the same time, to the degree that we're using them, I don't think it really matters. However, it is a more premium steel, and so that adds to the cost. Is this worth the $750? Well, again, I think it's priced very competitively. It's just funny because I think this one's more akin to the Slift than it is to the Serif, right? Because the Serif is channeled, chandwiched, excuse me. These ones are channeled. Serif is chandwiched, so that means that you've got, you know, two slabs coming together to form one handle, whereas these guys are machined out of one piece of titanium, you know? So I think these ones are closer to each other as far as like production goes, and that's what makes this one so interesting being more expensive, is there like more material here? Like, what is it that's pushing it into that $750 price range versus something that's only $550 from MachineWise, even though you can't get it right now, so maybe the prices are going to change. I don't know. It's a good question, and all I can say is Fellowship Blades is a smaller production. They're based in Texas versus Arizona, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It probably has some factor. I think Fellowship only has 2 employees, so again, much smaller. So the overhead to do stuff, you know, they're probably putting in more hours overall. It's not split up between 6 people like MachineWise has, but that brings on, you know, a different kind of cost. So different things to be considered. They might not have as much output. You got to think Fellowship Blades isn't putting out trainers and lower priced aluminum products like MachineWise is. They do have their hognose trainer, but I don't think that's nearly as popular as the Prisma. I haven't tried out a hognose, would love to because they look interesting, but you know, his more recently launched one, the Gaboon, which we're not talking about, but I'm going to talk about it right now. You know, $400 for the raw, or $390 for a raw Gaboon. That's a really, really well-priced balisong, and I love the Gaboon. I'm just scared to flip it because, you know, it is a slicer, dicer, micer. And I would love to get a non-sharpened version of it so that I can, you know, really wing it around. But Gaboon, I'd buy all day. Medusa, I'd have to try one of the older versions to see if those are more worthwhile compared to the V3. The V3 is very expensive. The only reason why I bought the V3 is because of my shoe setup. You know, we're matching. We got my green Birkenstocks and pink nail polish, and I've got my green-pink Medusa. That's literally the only reason why I bought this. Impulsivity. All right, moving onward and upward. So we've covered quite a few balisongs, and we've got 2 left. These are my most expensive balisongs, and probably the most shocking ones as far as what you get. The Revenge of the Blades Arsenal. This one's number 19. The blade steel on this is AEBL, which, if you're familiar with blade steels, and I'm sure you all are because blade steels are at the forefront of the balisong community, one of the things we care about the most. AEBL is used in the Squid Industries Crake Raken. So this is not S35VN. In fact, it's not even a premium steel. And yet this balisong costs $900, with some of the others going up to $1,100, depending on which serialized version of the arsenal you got. Now, Revenge of the Blades just went into production on these, and I think he's charging as little as $500 or $550 for the raw handles. Now, what does raw mean? Well, when I say raw, in this case, I just mean non-anodized, just like a gray finish or whatever. I think he is tumbling them or whatever. Anyways, the first 20 arsenals were serialized and had custom blade shapes, with each blade shape being different and being hand ground. Hand ground probably doesn't mean anything to you because, generally speaking, balisongs are not hand ground. They are machined, and they are mass produced, mass manufactured. Revenge of the Blades has, you know, I don't know if it's stamped or whatever, but he takes down the metal by hand to get each of these shapes. So this is essentially a custom knife. So it being priced at $900 is actually probably on the lower end of what you would find many knives that are made similarly by an individual knife maker by hand, putting in hours of work on a blade. So when you're buying this, you are paying for those hours of work that they put in on the blade, which is a very custom blade, whether or not this looks like the most crazy shape comparatively, which, yes, the Medusa is a pretty wicked shape, but this was machined. This was done by hand. And this is just a recurve blade, kind of a basic recurve blade with a swedge. But it's beautiful, like the lines on this, and it's probably not coming up on camera like I would want it to, but I really enjoy this knife quite a bit, and it's just very special in nature because of the personal time spent by the maker making it. The handles, I think, were, you know, machined like the other handles. I don't know the process on that, to be perfectly honest, but they are sick. They've got these cool little like bullet-looking things, and it's a wonderful feeling knife. And again, what are you paying for in this knife? You're paying for that time spent on the blade on this one, I believe. I think that's what it is. His production units, which are non-serialized, those ones, the blades are fully machined on those, so he's not putting in the same amount of time to get the blades out of them. And he's also starting out with buoy shape, so they're all Bowie shaped to start out with. So that's, again, this one's, you know, essentially 1 of 1, and that's what you're paying for in this one. 1 of 19, 1 of 1 to itself. So this one's really cool. All right, so now we're at the end. Going to show the most expensive balisong in my collection. It is the Area 51 Phobos, or Horizon, depending on, you know, how you identify it. So what's the difference between the Phobos and the Horizon? So the Horizon is just the Phobos, but the milling lines and the handles go horizontal instead of vertical. On the Phobos, the milling lines and the handles go vertical. So this one is the Horizon because of the horizontal milling lines that I'm sure are coming up on camera. This one was $1,000. Why was it $1,000? And these ones, I believe, have that range too, where they go up to like $1,200 sometimes, maybe. So why $1,200? Well, this is a collaboration between Area 51 and JK Designs, the maker of the Monarch, a very controversial figure in the community. Controversial because he makes expensive balisongs and he commands a high price for them. Is that wrong? Well, as I said earlier, he exists in the Bay Area, so the cost of doing work in that area of the country is just more expensive. He has higher rent cost, higher operating cost. That's what goes into producing these balisongs. So not only is it just a more expensive place to live, he also makes a damn mighty good balisong. I mean, the machining on this is insane. If I was going to complain about anything, it would be the handle gap being a little bit wider than my others. But again, that's a preference thing. Is that a problem with this balisong, or are those ones too narrow? You know, at the end of the day, it comes down to how they designed it and what works. And I do know that he came under fire couple years ago for one of his designs. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's the Monarch, actually, where it's a pinless design and it would develop handle slap over time. This one is not pinless. It does have Zen pins. They are hidden on the inside. And overall, I can't find much wrong with this other than the handle gap being slightly wider than my preferences are, but very, very little play, no tap. And I think the coolest thing with this one is that blade. It's like this hybrid Bowie. I love the comparison between it and the Medusa, because it's kind of like the Medusa is like it's like a transformation between the Medusa being like this Tonto shape and then this one being this buoy shape, but it's got this like point here where you have two different defined edges. I just think it's so cool. Probably one of the coolest blades in my collection. It might be the coolest blade in my collection. I'm trying to determine which one's cooler, and I think this is the coolest. The Medusa is the next coolest between this, but yeah. How does it flip? It flips great. I would say one of my biggest issues with it is that with the handles being a little bit more rectangular, if you were going to do something like a ladder, it's gonna be a little bit harder because it wants to like wiggle out. And again, I only do certain tricks when I'm working with a sharp knife, so it's one that I don't do with this typically, just out of, you know, good conscience. So hard to like say what the value is on $1,000 knife. Again, it goes down to like once you get past $300, you're paying for the QC work, you're paying for the preferences. You know, does it match your preferences? And if you're going to flip it, then there's also the collectability. You know, if you're just collecting them, does the price really matter? Like, you're gonna buy it. I think that's like a thing, is like people like to complain about prices on stuff, and it's just kind of like, it's not for you then. Not to be a dick, it's not like, oh, you can't afford it, so it's not for you. That's not the tone I'm trying to take. It's more like you don't need $1,000 balisong. Like, there's no need for it. Like, just buy something else. Buy a less expensive balisong, you know? That's kind of like the message here, is like, you don't get better as you increase the price. You get like less availability and more perceived value from the nature of it being, you can't just go buy it, right? And like right now, like the MachineWise products, you can't just go buy. You know, none of the Prismas are available. You can't buy a Prisma right now. They're sold out on the Prisma because they're working on expansion. Isn't that crazy? So like, $300 balisong, you can't buy right now. Think about that. And this one's in that 300 range because of the live blade. If you were wondering, I'm sure some of you are like, oh, the Prisma's only $180. And it's like, yes, if you buy the trainer. If you buy the live blade, it's more. So, you know, there's the perception of it all. You're paying for a perceived value, and it does deliver on some of that perception, because you got to look at the secondhand market on some of these things. A lot of these will retain their price, but something like the Medusa, you see a lot of Medusas, they don't hold resale. They'll go for, you know, as low as $300, $400. So this one was $750. Could I go around and sell this for $750 right now? No, I couldn't. If I wanted to sell this at this exact moment in time, I'd probably have to drop the price to like $500 if I wanted to sell it tomorrow. And I'd have to be extra clear that this is the V3, right? And I wouldn't do that because it's only going to undercut the value of the V3 unless I'm in like the dire straits, right? And I'm not in dire straits to get $500 right now. I'm very fortunate in that regard. I can hold on to this if I got into a certain accident, God forbid. Probably wouldn't have to sell off all my balisongs, you know? That's a fortunate circumstance that I'm in. If you're in a situation where you can't afford an accident right now, you shouldn't be buying $500 balisongs, frankly. It's not a good option. It doesn't bring you more value to your life. It doesn't bring you more value to your flipping. I can assure you of that. You will get along just fine with a $50 Polaris. As junky as I may have made this seem, honestly, a $50 Polaris is going to serve you just fine. You can wing this thing around and you're not going to be worried about it getting dinged up or scratched or whatever, because it's only $50. And that might be a lot to some people, and that's okay. If it is a lot to you, then you're going to cherish this thing and you're going to really work hard on it and you're going to get good at some stuff. Okay? If you can't afford, or if it's like out of your realm to be buying something that's like $700, you're not going to want to wing it around. You're not going to want to throw it around. Like, you know, if I lost this, I would be really, really, really upset, but it wouldn't break me financially. I'd just be pissed, you know? I'd be angry. Some people, that would be losing some savings, you know? So that's where it's just kind of like, if that's, you know, you, I would suggest going for something in like that less than $500 price range. And if you require titanium, find, like, I think BB Barfly, I haven't tried it out. I've heard lots of good things about that one. Check that out. I'd be interested in it. I just don't want to spend that price when I know I can afford, you know, the American made whatever. And I think there is something to support, you know, the makers in America, even though this one supports makers in China too. Poor example there. And correct me if I'm wrong. If it wasn't made in China at all, then tell me I'm wrong. Makers in America, you know, this was produced here in America. That's why you're going to spend $750 on it. You're helping two people continue making balisongs. This one, $1,000. It's going to JK, it's going to A51, and ultimately, you know, you're supporting their craft. they're, you know, individuals in the space that are doing some really boutique things that are cool. That's why I'm buying them. That's why I think they're worth paying that much, because it's like an artisanal thing. So, whereas with the Chinese made stuff, it's less artisanal, and I don't think you get the same value. But you get a great knife, you get a great flipper, you get something that you can learn on, you know, you get something that you aren't going to break your bank on. Anyways, if you made it to the end of this, which one of these should I give away? I want to give a trainer away so that people can experience something fun. We've got the Zenith. I think I want to get to 1,000 to give away the Zenith. The Volp, I'd give this thing away right now. I'd probably hand it over. Yeah, so anyways, all these are great options for someone on a budget and just wanting to goof off. I wanted to, you know, get deep into the collecting right off the start, and I'm going to be slowing it down quite a bit once I get what I'm considering my last balisong, which it's probably not going to be the last one if I'm being realistic, but I am going to try to take a break for the rest of the year on purchasing the balisongs, just because I think I need to, you know, do more reviews on each of these, more in depth than what we went into here. And then, you know, this next balisong that I got coming in is yet another grail of sorts. So look at all the shit I'm doing with a freaking Volp. Who knew the Volp was so good? Holy smokes. Go out and buy a Volp right now. Wilhurst Gay. Oh wait, no, I don't think that's that one might not work for you. But anyways, the Volp, definitely an option. Definitely a contender. Definitely could be in your hands. If you comment below, Volp or die, Mr. Rye. All right, have a great day. See y'all.